Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August 20th Board of County Commission meeting. And we will begin our meeting, as always, with our invocation, led this evening by Commissioner Barbara Harrison.
Please bow your head while I pray. Lord, we are meeting tonight to conduct matters of business for Union County. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech, wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues, and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. Impart your wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may be reached a successful conclusion. Lord, please bless and keep safe all those who wear the uniform, who serve our cities and our nation and our freedom. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a special recognition this evening, a proclamation of appreciation for Charlotte Water's management of Union County's water reclamation facilities. Ms. Coda?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As the board will recall, about more than 4 years ago, we entered into an agreement with Charlotte Water in which they operated our 5 wastewater facilities or water reclamation facilities. And they really did an outstanding job for us, as well as we transitioned those systems back to Union County on July 1st. They also were so helpful in helping with that transition. And Andy Neff, who is our Water and Wastewater Division Director, felt it was appropriate, and I agree, to thank them for their efforts. And I do believe there are a number of individuals here from Charlotte Water as part of this recognition.
Yeah. I think it behooves us to read the proclamation of appreciation. It says that whereas Charlotte Water entered into an agreement with Union County to provide operation and maintenance services for 5 wastewater facilities from June 1, 2014 through July 2, 2018, and whereas Charlotte Water hired and managed key positions at facilities, and Charlotte Water identified and made needed improvements to each county water reclamation facility, and whereas Charlotte Water initiated a system-wide sampling plan to schedule all sampling and completed specialized sample training for all operations staff. Charlotte Water established a preventative maintenance program that drastically improved the operating condition of multiple vital equipment pieces. And Charlotte Water developed and implemented process control and energy management plans to optimize operations. And Charlotte Water created a culture of trust between operations staff and managing teams of both utilities. Now, therefore, the Union County Board of Commissioners does hereby express its appreciation to Charlotte Water for its invaluable service and regional cooperation with Union County, adopted this 20th day of August, 2018. I assume I'll have someone to present this to. Is that correct?
I think you have a group to present it to. They would like to come forward.
All right. Who's going to be the chief receiver? Oh, okay, great. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
As always, we like to recognize those employees with the county who have tenure. And at this time, we'll do that. We have David Matthews in Growth Management with 5 years. Charlotte Kazaya and Lana Balcom in Human Services with 5. Carolyn Mayer with Legal for 5 years. Richard Williams, Community Services for 5 years. Mary Belk, Emergency Services, 5 years. Sean Dodd, Sheriff's Office, and Kristen Starnes with the Sheriff's Office, also 5 years. And Barbara Medlin in Human Services with 5 years. Our 10-year honorees are Hannah Terrell in Community Services, Timothy Broada in the Sheriff's Office, Carl Haywood with the Sheriff's Office, William Martin, Sheriff's Office, and Michelle Marcano in Human Services. 15 years, we have Kerry Michaels, Emergency Services, Samuel Glenn, Public Works, Chadwick Evans, Sheriff's Office, Tenny Knotts, also with the Sheriff's Office. And with 20 years, Mark Griffin, Growth Management, along with Terry Griffin in Growth Management, Heather Long in Tax Administration. So we appreciate those employees and their contribution to the success of Union County government. That brings us to our public hearing, opportunity for hearing by claimant regarding request for refund of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds Office. This is not in effect a public hearing, but is an opportunity for hearing by Hunter and Chandler Law Group, PLLC, to comment regarding a request for a refund of an overpayment of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds Office. Is there anyone present who wishes to comment from Hunter and Chandler Law Group, PLLC? This item is number 16 on our agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, our public hearing for Pure Power Contractors, Project Sun.
Yes, Mr. Pache, if you would come forward and provide an overview.
Chairman Simpson, Commissioners, Manager Cotto, it's my pleasure to bring before you tonight an Economic Development Incentive Grant request by Pure Power Contractors. Pure Power has been in Union County since 2012, located just south of us in the Waxhaw area, and currently has about 40 full-time employees. The company specializes in solar systems design and installation. The company is considering an investment of $2.55 million in a new facility in Indian Trail. The project will include the construction of approximately 18,000 square feet of new building that will potentially function as a headquarters office space and operations for the company. The company has indicated that incentives are very important to this project, and we are in competition with other surrounding counties. The company will potentially hire 5 new employees, and those will be paying, they pay very well with that at $18 to $25 per hour. Tonight we're requesting consideration for a Step 1 Economic Development Incentive Grant in the amount not to exceed $48,450 to be paid over 5 years beginning in fiscal year 2021 based on the Union County's tax office appraisal value each year and the company's anticipated investment of $2.1 million in the new building, as well as the additional monies in personal property. Based on this investment and holding all the factors constant, including depreciation, the company would pay an estimated ad valorem tax in new taxable dollars to the county of $93,189 over the same grant period. The actual tax revenue to the county will be based upon the current tax rate applied and the assessed value each year of the investment after depreciation. The project has a cost-benefit ratio. It's a little bit higher than what was in your staff report or abstract at 2.11 to 1 over the 5-year grant period and 4.51 to 1 over the life of the project. And that was due to some changes in the grant factors and stuff as we put that into the cost-benefit model. The Union County Economic Development staff recommend award of the Step 1 performance-based incentive grant to Pure Power contractors in an amount not to exceed $48,450 in order to help secure this $2.55 million investment here for our county. And again, they would be looking to put that in Indian Trail. So at this time, we have Justin Taylor, President, and Justin Coffey, the CEO of of Pure Power Corporation here, available to answer any questions if you have that. Otherwise, thank you.
Questions? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, gentlemen. Takes us to our informal comments. We have no one signed up to speak. And so that will take us to our additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I didn't know if there was anyone signed up to speak for the public hearing on the economic development, so if not, we need to put that in the record.
There was not. I'm sorry. I did miss that. Sorry. Thank you, Jeff.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I have a couple of items, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our fire funding update
Yes.
is listed as in the consent agenda, and I think that's supposed to be a part of the regular agenda. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir, it
And-
is.
All right. Well, I'm gonna move that down. We'll just move up the old business line and make item 25 in old business. I would like to take item 22 and move it to the regular agenda with regard to the manager's signatory authority. I'll put that under 27A, under new business. And bear with me. Can we move item 27 to put that just before the Yadkin River Supply Project?
We certainly can.
Okay, let's do that and move forward on that. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, do I need to withdraw my motion?
Did you make, repeat your motion, I'm sorry,
I just did a motion to accept the agenda.
as amended? Friendly,
I'll withdraw my motion.
okay. Motion to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Takes us to the consent.
Call for a vote on the nays.
I thought it did, but go. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Can we vote on the individual items
Sure,
to,
sure. We have the item to move the Pure Power to the front. All in favor of that idea, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The item 25 to move the fire funding update into old business. All in favor, say aye. Item 22, regarding the manager's signatory authority. My motion was to move that to the regular agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
nay?
Takes us to our first item under old business, which would be the fire funding study update.
Mr. James? The board will recall at your last meeting, we had a work session on fire funding. At that meeting, Commissioner Helms brought forward a fee schedule that was being used by Brunswick County. Staff was requested to review that information and bring it back to the board. Also, as part of Mr. James' presentation, he will also just be reviewing some of the material that we presented at our last meeting.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Cotto. Good afternoon or evening, Commissioners. We appreciate the time to talk about fire funding again. As Ms. Cotto mentioned, we were asked to look at House Bill 445, which was Brunswick County's local legislation. Staff has spent the past 2 weeks kind of reviewing, doing some research on Brunswick County, how they're structured, how it's working in that locality, and we look forward to having some conversation with the board and getting some direction to move forward. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to open up first talking about the fee methodology in North Carolina. It's been around for quite some time, and talk about kind of where it started and where it is now. We're going to do an overview of House Bill 445, some of the key components of that legislation, and how it's different from our fee legislation. We'll go into a comparison between Brunswick County and Union County, where we're similar, where we're different, to give some more context to the board as to how it works in that locality. We'll also go over House Bill 445. We're going to provide some options or some examples of Brunswick County, looking at a rural district, looking at an urban district, and that disparity between the two, or the difference between the two. We'll do something similar for Union County. We had staff run some examples of 2 districts in Union County using the House Bill Brunswick County model to show those examples as well. And then we'll talk about briefly some of the recommendations that you saw at the last work session in comparison to the fire fee legislation, and again at the end ask Commission for some direction on how you like staff to move forward.
Mr. James, may I ask one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Since you are taller than most of us, could you put the mic a little bit closer?
I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is that better? There we go. So looking at the fee methodology in North Carolina, I wanted to provide the board with just a breakdown of kind of how it started and where it is now. So Union County was one of the first localities, if not the first locality, to ask the General Assembly to use a fee-supported structure to fund fire protection. So we did that with Senate Bill 1150 in 1991. In 1995, Union County and Columbus-Bath County went back to the General Assembly and made some small changes to how we would fee or assess fees on mobile homes. In 1999 is when Brunswick County actually instituted their fee system in that county. It was very similar to ours. It kind of mirrored ours. I think they worked with our staff to build that bill in 1999. In 2001, Brunswick County went back to the General Assembly and asked to, and that's where they created that tiered rate structure that you're going to see today, utilizing square footage, utilizing acreage amounts as a way to assign fees in their districts. In 2007, Brunswick County went back to the General Assembly and increased those fees and expanded the number of tiers in the rate structure to get some more revenue growth that they needed. In 2009, that's when Union County went back. We asked for a doubling of the fire fee rate cap. That included a 2012 sunset, and in 2011, the General Assembly allowed that to be repealed, and that's where our rates are today. And again, on 2017, we'll talk about what Brunswick County did this past year to look at their rate structures again and double their fire fee rate cap. So that's just a brief breakdown of kind of where we are with the fee methodologies in North Carolina. So here's our current fee rate structure. I'm sure the board is familiar with this. When we got the rates doubled, here's where we sit currently. The shall not exceed amounts and the property classes associated with those amounts. So looking at House Bill 445, we wanted to talk about some of the main components in that local legislation that is different from Union County and unique to that bill. We'll start with talking about the fee district committee itself. We'll go through the fee schedule that was talked about at our last work session, and some of the financial and administrative requirements also included in that bill. So with the fee district committee, its role in this whole process is to provide local control over the whole fee setting process. You'll see the membership included, who's to be on that committee as directed by the legislation. And that committee meets with the fire department. They review their request. They verify it, validate it, make sure it's all makes sense for the needs of the department, makes sense for what the district can afford. And they actually propose that fee and propose that revenue requirement and budget to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration. And here are the fee schedules in House Bill 445. You'll see the types of classifications, the residential, the commercial, and the unapproved, and the associated fees looking at square footage and looking at acreage. So the legislation says that the fees cannot exceed the cost of providing service in the fire protection district. It applies to all owners of real property that benefit from fire protection. There is a 25% reduction in fees for those that are outside a six road mile boundary of a fire department. Animal production and horticultural operations have a not to exceed fee of $20. And that's hog houses, chicken houses, turkey houses, and any nursery business like that. And under House Bill 445, how Brunswick County implements it, all ag land, cattle, forestry land falls under the unimproved land category. Some of the financial and administrative requirements, they do quarterly disbursements to their fire departments, and they're very, House Bill 445 is very prescriptive on how that relationship works between the fire departments, the committees, and the county in terms of reporting. They have quarterly financial submittals that need to go to the county as far as invoices, cash receipts, bank statements, all that type of reporting. There's financial and compliance audit requirements on them. There's requirements for bonding for the treasurer, and the CFO is allowed and required to hold funding disbursements until all financial reporting is provided to the county. From an administrative standpoint, they have what they call a Fire Protection Oversight Committee, and that is appointed by the county commissioners and chaired by the emergency services staff. And it requires that any purchase over $10,000 goes to this committee and is approved and considered by that group. So the fees can be withheld, again, if the Fire Protection Oversight Committee does not approve of how the district's operating, and all VFDs are required to participate in some strategic-wide planning as conducted by emergency services. So here's a snapshot of Brunswick County today. The county manager going into this past fiscal year required or recommended to the board that they no longer provide any ad valorem subsidy to the fire departments. And as a result of that, 12 of the 22 districts requested fee increases to make up for that loss in revenue. And those increases range from 10% to 50%. Currently, 80% of the fire funding services in Brunswick County comes from fire fees. 20% of it comes from municipalities and other VFD funding. A lot of the districts in Brunswick County are served by municipal fire departments, a few of them anyway, so which is different from us. And Brunswick County, they set aside some money in case for some of the rural districts had an emergency expense they needed, or they didn't get the revenue they thought they would get. They set aside a little bit of money for those districts. In talking with some of their staff, kind of asking about their experience. So when House Bill 445 came in, and even a little bit before them, there was discussion of consolidation, some merger, trying to gain some efficiency in their fire operations. And Yonpin Beach was one that actually dissolved and merged with the Southport Municipal Fire. It used to serve the town of Castle Beach, so they subsequently contracted with the town of Southport. Leland VFD, another example of a rural district that merged with the town of Leland to be in their municipal department. So just some rearranging that happened as a result of the whole conversation over fire fees in Brunswick County. Overall, the impact of House Bill 445, it did provide for the necessary funding for the volunteer fire departments. It gave them much more capacity and revenue. Overall, looking at some of the commission minutes, looking at some of the reporting done, I think they're still having some conversations on what is the best method to go forward for Brunswick County. But overall, we did allow for the removal of ad valorem subsidies to some of the smaller districts. So we wanted to provide some context for the board to better understand Brunswick County, or kind of how we're similar, how we're different. So Brunswick County currently has a population of 130,000 people, median home value of 189, which is close to us. They do have a much smaller agricultural presence than Union County does. They have 45,000 acres. On the next slide, you'll see what ours is. Very different situation from an ag perspective. They have 22 fire districts. Their budget for FY19 was a little over $21 million. And approximately 65% of their population is along the Highway 17 corridor, which is on the eastern bend of Brunswick County, which is in their feed districts. And that's the density of their population is along that corridor. So looking at Union County, we wanted to show the population. We're about 100,000 more than them. A similar medium home value. Our agricultural land is much greater than Brunswick County. We have over 200,000 acres of ag parcels in Union County. As you all know, 17 fire districts. Our budget for this year was a little over $13 million, and approximately 66% of our population lives in our tax districts or lives in the city of Monroe. And 69% of the land area is within fire fee districts in the county. So you ever see a little bit of the difference between us and Brunswick and some of the similarities as well. So when we wanted to compare ourselves, Brunswick County to Union County, we wanted to pull some example districts. So we wanted to pull a rural and a more dense district to show the example, really looking at the top and the bottom. What's the best case scenario, worst case scenario in terms of density and how it works with the fee structure. So we chose Grissett Town Longwood, which is in the kind of southeast corner of Brunswick County. It's a very rural district. They have a budget of a little shy of $400,000, 2,800 parcels. And we also chose Southport, which is the town of Southport and the area around that locality. They've got a budget of $882,000 and 6,300 parcels in that district. And as you can see, looking at the residential acreage and the commercial fee charts for those, you'll see the difference between those types of districts for the similar characteristics, paying a different rate based on the level of density and the revenue available within those districts. So we did a similar thing for Union County. We looked at a rural district and looked at a more dense district. We chose Lanes Creek and Bakers as some good examples of a dense district, again, and a rural district to show the highs and lows. FY19, Lanes Creek is a $299,000 budget. They have about 1,600 parcels in that district. For Bakers, there's a budget of $800,000 and 6,900 parcels in that district. And you can see, looking at the fire fee rate charts associated with those classifications, you can see the fee difference between Lanes Creek and Bakers, again, using that Brunswick model on how they have their structure. So some of the takeaways, we tried to the best extent possible to mirror what Brunswick County did to provide the board with some context and comparison. Obviously, it takes staff much more than 2 weeks to really get in the weeds and understand exactly what we're looking at from an implementation perspective, but we're fairly certain, pretty sure what you're seeing today is an accurate representation of what it would look like in Union County. So take Lanes Creek, for example. If we maxed out every rate in those tiers, we anticipate getting about $275,000 in revenue, which falls short of their FY19 budget. So most likely, using the Brunswick model, we would not meet Lanes Creek revenue requirements for FY19. And oppose that to Baker's district, which has a revenue capacity of almost $2 million using the Brunswick model. And their budget for FY19 was $800,000. They have plenty of room to grow. They have capacity within this rate structure, and density helps if you're going to have something like this, looking at the Brunswick example anyway. So overall, new development is the only way to create flexibility in the rate structures, but under House Bill 445, our commercial properties do pay a greater percentage than they do now in our rate system, or in a fee system. So just some notes for the board. If we were going to request a legislative fix for fire funding and ask to amend our bill, which is House Bill 565, looking at what the Brunswick model does with the fee structures, it does create some revenue capacity for most of our districts. Lanes Creek is probably at the worst case scenario of using the Brunswick model. It does allow for us to remove some countywide subsidy. We do anticipate that there would be an increased demand on staff, especially in the tax office, in dealing with the square foot assessments, potential appeals. If you can imagine, if a home falls in the 2001 square foot category, that's a big change in the fee, and they will obviously or may ask for an appeal or staff to come look at that and verify that. I think that's kind of the impression we got from their staff, is that it is a complex structure. It meets their needs, but it is a structure that has to be managed and managed closely. Looking at the financial administrative requirements, the Fire Protection Oversight Committee, we would need to make sure that whatever legislation that the board requested of the General Assembly, that it does not conflict with the 2016 Fire and Rescue Services Agreement. Some of the language in House Bill 445, we already addressed that in our contract with the Volunteer Fire Department, so we need to make sure that those don't conflict with each other. And with the fire district committees, as you can imagine, that's 12 district committees to manage and staff and provide input to and make sure that they are structured and running properly as we go to the budget process. And their responsibility is to partake in that whole budget development process. We need to make sure that they're resourced well and have the information they need to do what they're tasked to do. Overall, one of the good things about House Bill 445 is it does allow for fire fees to be collected in the same manner as property taxes. Currently, it's much more difficult to collect delinquent fees as opposed to collect delinquent taxes, so that is a benefit there. And also, it would not require municipal approval, which, as you will recall, was one of the steps the board would have to take in doing one of the taxing options that was recommended in the study we talked about at the last work session. We estimate 2 to 3 months ballpark to work with the commission and legal and staff to draft up some legislation language if they chose to go this way, and then present that to the delegation for their consideration. So here are the options that the board has seen so far. We've talked about self-funding tax district, and we've talked about the 6th district, countywide tax, self-funding plus a county % subsidy, and local legislation, fire fee methodology, which we talked about just now. I know you guys have seen this slide before, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them, but this is some of the things we want to remind the board that's built into those fire tax options. We're looking at Monroe and Weddington being reimbursed, all fee districts being tax districts, the sales tax being shared among all fee districts becoming tax districts, and all the details built into Stantec's recommendation. So here is the self-funding district and the associated tax rates. Our 6th district option, which again was a consolidation of all the fee districts into tax districts. Our countywide tax with no local district tax. And here's a breakdown of that whole continuum we showed of self-supporting tax districts plus a percentage of county subsidy. And I think in the initial chart we had, it had a district tax and a countywide tax. We combined those to be what the rate would be overall in each district based on the amount of subsidy the county provides. Again, staff is looking to, or anticipates working towards FY 2020 implementation, excuse me. And these are some of the steps we need to take depending on the option that the board chooses to move forward with. We're still anticipating trying to get everything done and back to the board by February of 2019 to be ready for the next budget year. So now I'd ask for any commission questions or input direction on moving forward.
Mr. Hale?
Yes, can you go back to the slide that lists Lanes Creek and Bakers?
Yes, sir.
Have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
The Lanes Creek, $100, is that, how does that equate? I mean, I'm trying to understand how you know, Bakers is 4167.
Mm-hmm.
What do the two numbers represent?
So Lanes Creek, we need to maximize that rate to have enough money in the entire district. And it goes back really to this slide right here. Lanes Creek only has $275,000 worth of capacity in revenue to have. Bakers has almost $2 million.
Yep.
And we can't maximize the fee that's paid in Bakers because they'll have way over the money that they actually need. So we have to reduce that rate down to meet their budget requirements.
So the $41 basically would meet their budgets?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
On that particular classification.
What's it, and you go back to where you listed Lanes Creek again at 275,000. What all is included in that?
If I might just
Yes, ma'am.
input for just a minute. The chart that is below those dollar values, which is, this is how Brunswick County uses it. So if you've got a mobile home or a 1,000-square-foot home, you pay the $100 or the $41. So it's based upon those square footages for residential, and then they also have a component for acreage as well as commercial. So that's how the dollars going across are actually tabulated, is based upon those particular categories
So
and how they apply to the district.
They represent the size of the structure.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have explained that. The
Okay.
A1 through A9, that correlates with square footage.
Okay, all right,
And same
just wanted to
thing.
clarify.
Yes, sir.
The 275,000, for example, what's included in that? Well, I mean, what revenue funds contribute to that?
That is, if we were to implement this right here,
Yes, sir.
that is all the revenue. They only have 1,600 or 1,668 parcels in the
Okay.
district. If we were to assign this rate, depending on the property characteristic itself, how much square footage, the acreage, the commercial property, we estimate that's how much money you can raise using the Brunswick model.
Okay,
So that's just strictly how much revenue is available, capacity.
okay.
Commissioner Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we gone to any of the towns and done this presentation, or have we heard from any of the towns on a vote on what they're planning to do? I know that Indian Trail, Lanes Creek, Emory Bridge, Stylings had all talked about going together. We've heard word of Wesley Chapel and Waxhaw going together and creating a municipal tax district. Have we given this presentation to the towns?
We sent a letter at the board direction back in October, November, in which to 5 of the municipalities that are in the fee district right now, and we did not receive much of a response. I think one of the response I received was Fairview, and they were like, it's difficult for us to provide you with a response without having a rate involved. At this point, we have not gone out to any of the municipalities because we really need some direction from the board as to, is there 1 or 2 that you prefer or that you don't want us to do any further work on? As it relates to Indian Trail, Hemby Bridge, Lake Park, and Stallings, and I believe Chief Blythe verified this at our last meeting, is they have had, I think the last precinct they had was in June, but they are probably quite, maybe even more than a year or so out from having sufficient enough information. They are still in the very early ages of the study, is my understanding. And all the town council meeting of Indian Trail that I watched, all they agreed was to continue to study the issue. They took no other action.
If we went with a countywide tax or any of the others, and they decided to do that, would we not have to fund them at 100% or give them back 100% of what we collect, as well as like the city of Monroe?
If you were to go with the funding model that requires that we reimburse Monroe and we reimburse Weddington, or if you were to kind of slice them out, you would treat them as you would similar to Weddington and Monroe, if in fact they were to be completely self-supporting and not be taking any of the county dollars.
Chairman. I've been speaking with the chairman of Brunswick County's commissioners, and we're going to be in Hickory this week at the State Association meeting, and he has agreed for myself and Ms. Lancaster to meet with them to understand better. It'll also be their manager and the commissioner that was one of the driving forces in the changes. I'm looking forward to hearing that because the first 4 items are the ones that we've been discussing for 4 years and couldn't come to agreement. I'd like to have a little more understanding of the Brunswick model. You said Lanes Creek came in the worst case.
Yeah, it's a fine example of,
Yeah.
of a very rural district.
Yeah, and it's worst case, and it just missed it by $15,000 basically. And Baker's is an overachiever, I guess you'd call it. So I'd like to see some more investigation in this and a full understanding of each district individually. Some of these I have, and I talked about the 6th district myself, and one of the things that concerns me with there is the sales tax distribution creates some angst in Waxhaw and Wesley Chapel and Hemby Bridge, the tax districts now, so it redistricts that. So I think we need to do some more in-depth study, and before we can give you direction on any one of these is my opinion. And so I'd ask that we do that investigation now, but we can't, we've been kicking this can down the road for 4 years. And so if we do more investigation, it's got to be intense. And I'd like to say, I think you did a very fine job. It's well presented, and evidently you did a lot of homework. So, but appreciate what you did. But I'd like to understand it more, and maybe if we could, maybe it's the Brunswick County model is one that we could tweak and make it more feasible for us, because in that, we don't have to mess with sales tax.
Yes, sir.
And so, because most of the models I saw, I'm in the highest fire tax district in the county. And it's going, it goes up under all the other models. So I'd like to see us work a little more. I like the fire, how did they list it? It's kind of like our fire commission, but it's a little different. It's actually got the ability to review and tell Mr. Sharp whether he's got a reasonable request or he's not asking for enough. And he's grinning at me because he knows. But, it's a good thing if we have the right people on the commission. And it may not be the same type commission we have today, but it's a group of community representatives can help us make good decisions on fire.
It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but each district has a committee. Is that correct?
In
so
Brunswick
you would
County.
have 12 committees, yes, in Brunswick, yes.
Well, I think Brunswick has about 15 people on that force. And, they select, the way I was explained, basically they try to have 5 fire chiefs or their representative, 5 municipality represented, and then
Are you
5.
talking about the general, the oversight committee, the countywide oversight committee?
Yeah, that's the way it was explained to me.
got you. Yes,
but
sir.
I'm looking forward to Ms. Lancaster hearing from the authors of this particular bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like you to investigate more, give us more detail about the commercial side, because if I'm looking at it right now, if it's greater than 5,000 square feet, we charge $200. So if it's a strip mall, we charge $200 for fire fee?
You talking about commercial properties? Is that what you said?
So the Brunswick model obviously was much higher. So I'd like that to be part of the analysis, that if we didn't do all the Brunswick model, but what about doing more with commercial, where we charge more fire, tax fee, whatever, to the commercial buildings?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
It's not like they don't go there. Thank you.
Michael, we found ourselves in this position from years ago. Years ago, we instituted the fee, and it was an easy fix. It pretty much took care of the thing. And then as fire department budgets increased, we didn't have enough fee, so we had to go and get some more fee, and then there's some more fee, and now we find ourselves at where we're out of fee again. I don't know enough to be dangerous on this Brunswick County effort, but do you see potential in that for progressively moving into where you're out of money again and you're going to have to revisit the issue just as we have with the fee?
Yes, sir. I think that's why I added the first slide talking about the fire fee methodology. You can see how many times a county has gone back to the General Assembly to increase, to expand the tier, to ask for a higher cap. We've done it ourselves. Brunswick County's done it 3 times, I think. There seems to be a pattern of density doesn't grow in a district, but the cost of fire grows, but you have no capacity within your fee revenue, Lanes Creek, for example. The only option is to increase that rate.
Commissioner Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I looked through these after the months that we've spent and even years that we've spent. What I'm concerned is that now even the countywide option, because when we looked at this before, the countywide option was basically the only thing that the commissioners could, as a single unit, pass and get that to, and that was just the word. That was just the way it goes. We could pass a countywide fire tax, create the countywide district, and go there. But now with the municipalities, if they do that, and we're giving back 100% of the revenue generated in those municipalities, I wonder what that would look like, and it looks like it gets back to more of the 6th district. Then that 6th district, what happens if those municipalities start doing things different as well? The only thing that one municipality out of 14 couldn't stop was that countywide option, but they might not stop it, but they could have a huge impact on the tax revenue needed for one part of the county or the other. So until we get, we had municipalities that came up last time that didn't even really understand how we did the system. They didn't understand why they were being taxed with the 0.48 cents, I think it was then, and now it's 1.03, I believe, this year.
Yes, sir.
1.03 this year. So we're going to have to educate the municipalities on this issue, because it only takes, again, some of these only take one to nix all the work that's been done. Just like with five commissioners, it only takes 3 to pass it or not pass it. And there's a lot of time, a lot of energy spent on this. Right now, we have a way of managing the budgets. We have a system in place, and until those municipalities decide what they're going to do, we can continue with what we have and use the budget process to manage the budgets of the fire department. Because as you said, it only goes up and up and up. And the decisions that we make, whether some of the fire departments eventually merge or what happens, maybe there's just decisions that are going to have to be made on their levels with the autonomy. So like I said, until we can get all 14 municipalities to buy into what we're doing and not come up at the last minute and say, wait a minute, we didn't understand this, we don't like this, we're not going to support this, we've got to go to them and get them to buy in on whatever we decide to do. So maybe we should be asking them how they're going to vote. I appreciate that they don't understand either, but that's maybe our failing in this, is that this is a bottom up. This starts at the fire department, and then it goes to municipality, and then it comes to the county. And otherwise, again, all we have to have is 3 commissioners spoken to by the fire departments or the municipalities to squash anything that we decide tonight.
Well, and we have shared both presentations that we have given to the board with fire chiefs. Mr. James did that. And I certainly don't want to speak for the chiefs, but they were, the proposal that came forward was the option where the
20% subsidy.
The sliding subsidy on the county, and I have not heard contrary to that. My understanding is with the chiefs, that's still the option that they prefer.
Isn't that similar to what we have now?
Yes, it is.
So if they, you know, I think
except we were using a tax rate versus a fee rate. That was the difference.
And I believe the whole, you know, the autonomy issue was the one that we heard over and over again, and a fear of change, a fear of doing something different, not knowing the results, what it would be. I've got all that, and I was completely comfortable with that countywide rate. But now, again, we have municipalities, if we're giving back 100% of the money collected, what happens to that, all the ones that are left over? And I think we start seeing a higher tax rate in those areas. And I think that's what we want to avoid is, you know, and again, I just don't know how all that looks, but until the towns buy into what we're going to do, it only takes one to mess up a lot of this. Can we maybe send staff to, that'll give Commissioner Helms enough time to have his and Michelle's meeting with Brunswick County, and then that will give us some time that we can do a presentation to each town and maybe get a feel for where they're at in September?
We can do that. I'm sure the towns may ask, is there one particular one that you all are looking at? But we can certainly go to all 14 municipal government, well, we wouldn't go to Monroe, or I guess Weddington, and ask them if they have a preference and bring that back to the board. I'm not sure. Depends on how frequently they meet. We do have some that don't meet as frequently as we do, so if that was the board direction.
I'll offer a friendly amendment to that. I would have you to take a look at, call it a forum, call it a workshop, call it whatever you want, and have that and inform the municipalities of the purpose of the workshop and have them have representatives there. 14 municipalities, that's a lot of work and a lot of effort to go to each and every one of them when you can bring it into one presentation. And maybe there'll be someone from, let's just use for example, someone from a Weddington that would make a suggestion that Wesley Chapel would pick up on and like the idea. You get some back and forth and some conversation about the issue as opposed to siloing every municipality.
I think that's a good idea.
I agree, that's a good idea.
And maybe possibly send this along to each, so each town council can look at this during their meetings, so maybe they have more, that way you don't have one person on the council and not a majority, but yeah, I think that would be fantastic to do one presentation for all the municipalities and then send this along to the municipalities as well, what you've shown us tonight.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Michael was good. You brought all the chiefs together at one time down at Mineral Springs, and maybe an opportunity to have that conversation
Yes, sir.
and hear what they all think. I think if we came up with a reasonable solution, we wouldn't be, I think some of the fire departments talking about municipal districts might not be as attractive. They want reasonable tax rate. They want autonomy to run, but some of these plans do have legislation that has requirements that they run to certain things. Well, they have that now, so it's. I think we can get some more information. I'd like to see a little more drill down on the Brunswick model for the other locations too, because if we're going to talk to them, we need to say, okay, this is kind of how it hits you.
And I had Michael only run 2 because to run all of them was going to take us quite a bit of staff resources, and we wanted to make sure there was some interest at the board level before we went to that effort.
And like I said earlier, that's why we chose them, because everyone else should fall in between those 2 districts, so just to give an idea.
So you're basically saying all but Lanes Creek would meet their needs.
Just looking at how many parcels and
Yeah.
the taxable value in the district, we have to see obviously when we look at them, but I know it's one of the ones on the lower
Talking
end.
about change, the change is happening, and Chief, you can tell me if you agree or not, but your model's changing in the sense that there's not as many volunteers out there. People are working in other locations. The days of the farmer running in from the field to fight the fires is history now, so they're getting creative with part-timers and things like that, so that's going to be nature of the beast in the future, I think.
Further comments or questions for Michael? Madam Manager, does that give you enough direction?
I want to make sure that just because I know you made a friendly amendment to the motion, which is for us to conduct a forum and invite all of the municipalities to participate, go through this presentation with them, get their feedback, and also to send a copy of the presentation to them prior to the forum being conducted, and then bring back what we hear to this board.
I think we've heard numerous times the importance of the municipalities being informed, and that's what we want to do is make an effort to do that. So, thank you. Couple things. One, motion to approve consent agenda as amended. We didn't get that taken care of. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Did we need a vote on that we just did, or?
I'm sorry. Motion to give staff direction with regard to the fire service. Yes, okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, Jeff. I just saw the shaking of heads and
So,
that was sufficient.
we moved item 27, the step 1 economic development incentive grant up to this point.
Yes, Chairman and Commissioners, Mr. Platté made a presentation a little bit earlier in the evening with respect to Project Sun, and the action before you is to approve a Step 1 existing economic development incentive grant in the amount not to exceed $48,450 over a 5-year period for Pure Power Contractors Project Sun, and authorize the county manager to approve an incentive grant agreement with the company pending legal review.
We'll take that motion and move forward. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, we thank you for your interest in Union County. The Yadkin River Water Supply Project Phase 1 contract.
Yes, Mr. Gullett has a presentation he would like to make before the board takes action on this item.
So how do I put this up? So I have some slides, and so while those are coming up, I just want to say what you have before you tonight are 3 very important contracts related to the Yadkin River Water Supply Project. And so just want to run through a little bit of the background and some specifics about those contracts to let you know what they are about. And so how do I get the presentation started here? Let's see. There it is. I got it.
Click twice, Barry.
Thought
Okay.
I did. Okay, now we're going. Okay, so I'm going to go through a little bit of background and talk a little bit about the project and specifically the actions that, that we're asking of the board this evening. And so, as you all know, this has been a long-running effort. I think it actually is more than 10 years. I think it started around 2004 to develop a water supply for Union County coming from the Yadkin River Basin. And so the latest update on this project is that the total all-in program cost is estimated to be about $205 million, and that's in 2018 dollars. So that number will continue to go up if we get delays. You've seen this chart before. You have to look carefully at this chart. There's actually 2 of these. One of them shows the demand for the whole county, but this one is just showing the demand for the Yadkin River Basin. And you can see the various sources of water supply that the county is depending on, and those blue bars represent the new project, the Yadkin River Supply Project. And you can see the very substantial role that this project is going to play in satisfying the water demands for that part of Union County through at least the year 2040. And so there's been a lot of action. You've heard about this project, as we said, for years and years and years, and it's probably seemed kind of like something that's off in the distance, and when is it going to happen? And so one of the things I want to point out tonight is that a lot of folks have been really busy on this, and there's been a lot of work done. And so you can see some of the milestones here, but I'd like to point out over here on this chart, this really starts in 2004 with the beginning and the conceptual planning, and then it ends in 2022 down at the bottom with the plant operating and providing water to the customers and the residents of Union County. And you can see we're down below the midpoint now. We're down to where a lot of things are happening, and so we are down to the design and permitting and getting ready, preparing to move into that construction phase. So the project is split for construction purposes into two separate components. So the first component is the raw water intake and the raw water pipeline that would be built on Lake Tillery and would bring the water over into Union County to the treatment plant. And then the second part of the project is the treatment plant itself that will produce the drinking water for the customers, and a section of finished water, treated water line that really interconnects the plant to the rest of the distribution and transmission system so that the water from the plant can get to to people who live in Union County, to our customers. And so this is just a map that kind of illustrates what we believe the route will be for that raw water line. The plant would be located right here, and then a section of finished water line leaving that. So you can see it's a good distance. It generally follows the roads and highways through there, but it will require that we obtain right-of-way and easement. It'll be built parallel to the road. So just to give you an example of how much work has been done to get to where we are today to award these design build contracts, the raw water intake is really at about the 30% design level. So a lot of work has been done to that was necessary to apply for some of the permits from Duke Energy and to really frame the project for the design build teams to know what they were proposing on, to be able to develop their fees and their costs going forward. And this piece of land, this real estate, has been acquired by Norwood, so it's ready to go, subject to the rest of the design and to the issuance of the permit by Duke. And then the water treatment plant, the preliminary engineering report has been completed for the treatment plant itself. And it really is looking at, and the site has been acquired. And so part of the purpose of that was to be sure that the plant will actually fit on the site and that it's operable in that location, and to kind of come up with a footprint and some concept of how the plant would work, what kind of treatment would be required and that sort of thing. So that is, so that's where the two projects are at this point. And so the schedule going forward is that we hope that these contracts will be awarded tonight, and then we've got to keep working on the project permitting, which is, again, is well underway. All this leads up to coming back to the commissioners probably around a year from now to when we've got design up to the 60% complete level. And at that point, the design build teams will give us, we will be negotiating with them, a guaranteed maximum price. In other words, they'll be willing to say, we will finish this project for this many dollars. And so that will be coming back to the board. And I've got a chart that shows how that works a little bit better coming up. And so assuming that that those contracts are approved, then the design build teams finish the design and begin construction. They will probably do those things kind of simultaneously. There will be some early start items that they can go ahead and start breaking ground and doing some work before they actually 100% wrap up the design work. And again, all this is leading up to providing water to the customers during the first quarter of 2022. And so I want to talk a little bit about the process that we're using, because it's a little different than you might have seen before. And so there are really kind of four major ways that municipalities in North Carolina can execute, implement, or deliver projects. You'll hear all those words kind of used interchangeably. So what we're all used to seeing has been what we call the design, bid, build. So you hire an engineer, they design something, you put it out on the street, and you get bids from contractors. You get a low bid, you award it to that low bidder, and they go build it. That's the traditional method. There's a couple of intermediate types. There's a construction manager at risk, there's a fixed price design build, and then there's the progressive design build. And what we are working on with this project is the progressive design build model. And I want to show you a little bit about how that works. This is the design bid build, as we were saying, and this is the traditional way. And what you usually wind up with in this on a large project, sometimes on small projects, are a lot of finger pointing. When you get to the end of the day and there's some problem with the project, it's not unusual for there to be the contractor saying the consultant did it wrong, the consultant saying the contractor did it wrong, and the owner, that's us, the owner standing in the middle is a referee. So that carries with it a lot of risk, and it's not very collaborative process. You don't get input from the folks that are going to build it while you're designing it, so it has some drawbacks. And so in North Carolina, it's really kind of recent that we had the legislative authority to do design build. And since it has come about, it's becoming the norm. This is becoming more and more used in the industry. And so this places more of a single point of responsibility. When you hire the team, you're hiring the whole team. You're hiring the engineer and the contractor all at one time. That becomes your design build team. And so that team is responsible for designing and building and making sure that this project works. The owner has input into the process along with the designer and the builder during the design and all along through the process. So, so it's a little bit different. The schedule can be accelerated because, as I said earlier, the contractor can actually start doing some of the work before the plans are actually 100% complete. So that's a benefit. And again, it really is a good way to manage risk that's associated with these really large contracts. So this is kind of a layout of how it works schematically. And so where we are right now is this design to 30% level. And so, and the select design builder. So we've been working to negotiate these design build contracts, and you can see that this progresses to that 60%. This finished design should really say finished preliminary design, and submit that the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price. That's when it comes back to the board, and that's when you have this off-ramp that you've been hearing about in presentations now for several years. So your off-ramp is, well, your choices at that point are you can approve that guaranteed maximum price and we proceed on with the project as a design build project. Your other option at that point is you can reject the guaranteed maximum price. And all of that design work that's been done at that point belongs to the county. And so then what the county would do is we go hire another engineer that would finish that, they would take that set of 60% plans and they would finish the design, they put it out on the street as a traditional bid or design bid build project. And so that's what this bottom row on this chart shows. So, so that's kind of where we are at this point. So there are 3 contracts before you tonight. The program management services is an important part of a design build project. This is HDR, and they will serve as the county's representative. They'll be looking over the shoulder of the design build teams that you approve, and they're going to be sure that the county's getting what we want, what we need, something that works, and that the cost estimating, the guaranteed maximum price, is pushed to where it needs to be. They will also handle a lot of the property acquisition process going through from now. I think there are hearing numbers of 300 to 400 parcels of right-of-way. So HDR will be coordinating that. There are several other tasks and oversight, project management, contract administration, that type of thing that HDR will be doing. The second contract is the design build team that's led by Garney Companies. And Garney is a very large construction contractor, and their team would be working on the raw water intake and that raw water line. And then the third one is with CDM Constructors, and again, a very large company, and they would be working on the finished water plant and the finished water main. And so this is some of what I've already covered. It's got the dollar amount on here, which is also in your action abstract. So you can see the kinds of things that HDR will be doing as a continuation of their program management services. Then Garney, lump sum amount for this phase.
Can you go back to that previous slide?
Yes, sir.
That previous slide.
I think I can. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. And so, so what the design bid teams will do is they will develop this basis of design report. They'll have workshops with staff and be sure that everybody's had their input into what this project ultimately looks like and how it will work. And they'll develop their schedules and cost estimates. They'll have a way to manage risk. They'll do a lot of the things that happen on every project, but the difference is that there will be the engineer and the builder working together to come up with ways to do it most efficiently, to be sure it's constructible, and to be sure that the project can be delivered on time. And then with CDM, same type of thing. Another part of their process is to develop the treatment process at the drinking water plant. So they will be looking at the quality of the water that we're likely to get from Lake Tillery and what kind of treatment processes need to be incorporated into the plant to be sure that they'll produce safe, reliable drinking water that's also compatible with the drinking water from the other sources that Union County depends upon. And so again, the actions that we're requesting this evening are to approve those 3 contracts as you see them on the screen here and as they're shown in your agenda. And that's where we are.
Questions? Richard?
Yep, is the process for the water treatment plant on the Yadkin, is it very similar to what Lancaster is, or are there differences because of the location?
Do you mean is the plant similar to the Lancaster plant?
You know, you're talking about the processes that this design firm would have to do to ensure we have good, solid drinking water.
We really don't know the answer to that yet. That's part of the work that the design build team will do. I would say there's a good likelihood that they'll be similar. The Lancaster plant's what's referred to as a conventional water plant. The thinking is at this point that probably a conventional plant will be the outcome, but that isn't finally determined yet. It won't be until the engineers get dug into it a little bit more.
Okay. Mr. Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public relations, HDR is in charge of public relations.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? Are they currently doing the public relations for the county's water and enterprise fund projects?
They are doing the public relations for this project.
Okay.
For the Yadkin project.
I noticed in the water bill and sewer bills that went out this month that there was an attachment in there that told folks how we were going to be raising their rates for the next 3 years, and that we were going to be using that to provide good, clean water for them. I had a question from several of them that said, well, don't I already have good, clean water, and don't I have a sewer? I said, yeah, you do. And this is for new construction that's coming up, and possibly for existing homes that are here. So I would caution HDR, if they're putting this information out, that they might want to talk to the Board of Commissioners a little bit more about that.
Okay,
That was
that is
actually done internally. That
Right.
was not done by HDR.
Well, you know, that they're putting in, any Board of Commissioners can come in and change any of that. So I would just caution against telling folks what the Board of Commissioners are going to do 3 years out when we don't know. We can't bind the hands of future boards.
I hear you. Okay.
I would move that we approve the scope of services as shown in the attached amendment to Task Order 2012-05 with HDR Engineering Incorporated in the amount of $3,269,38, and authorize the county manager to execute the agreement upon legal review. To also approve the progressive design build agreement with Garney Companies Incorporated in the amount of $6,455,804, and authorize the county manager to execute the agreement upon legal review. And to approve the progressive design build agreement with CDM Constructors Incorporated in the amount of $6,989,324, and authorize the county manager to execute the agreement upon legal review. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? I believe that takes us to item 28.
These are appointments to your Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. They have 3 vacant positions, including 1 representing the disabled community, and 4 applications have been received. I do not see the names.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Ms. Harris.
First of all, I want to say all 4 applicants, I was impressed by what they had written, and I want to apologize up front. I'm going to butcher everybody's name equally, but I'd like to make the
Now you know how I feel, boy.
You do a much better job. I'd like to recommend Ronald Damerol, Tyrone Singletary, and William Harbour to the Parks and Rec Board. And they meet all our requirements.
We have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor of those three appointments, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. 29, Consolidated Human Services Agency Board.
Yes, this board is composed of up to 25 members. Presently, we have 17 positions within our board, 8 of which are filled. Typically, we advertise the positions. Those applications we receive, we actually take them to the Human Services Board for recommendation to this board. The 2 applications that are before you this evening have gone before the Human Services Board, and they did recommend forwarding them to the Board of County Commissioners, recommending approval. And that's Megan Smith and Jesse Lindberg.
Mr. Helms?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Megan Smith to a 4-year term as community representative and appoint Jesse Lindberg for a 4-year term as a nonprofit representative to the Consolidated Human Services Agency Board.
All in favor of those appointments, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Ms. Cotto?
No comments this evening?
Mr. Helms?
No comments.
Commissioner Rushing?
No comments.
Mr. Harrison?
No comment.
Commissioner Akins?
No comments.
That was quick. I'd just like to make one comment. I was elected to the Board of County Commissioners in 2008. 10, I'm sorry, it's been so long, I'm forgetting the right year. 2010. And upon the new board taking our seats, one of the first things we did was request the county to equip the training room with cameras and microphones, because, and I can't swear by this, it simply goes on what I was told, that previous boards had work sessions in private and talked and discussed situations and made decisions when they got in the boardroom. So it was a belief of the majority of the board, it was very important that we maintain transparency and openness of government with our citizens. Well, I'm all about intelligent discourse, the right to agree and disagree. I'm also a believer in transparency. And Jeff Yates, I remember the 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So I hope we keep that in mind on this board. We meet here in front of the citizens, in front of these cameras, to do business. Talk about the business that affects the citizens of this county, the taxpayers of this county. And we should all be able to participate in that debate. I remember in my younger years when I had 3 young boys, I used to coach a lot of youth basketball. And had a very competitive coach that we sparred many times, and he had a little different philosophy on the game. He was a slam and dunk coach, and I was an outside man. And he used to love to come up to me and say, you live by the threes and you die by the threes. So I'll let you think about that. Motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye.